Welcome back to McCarthy Performance. I've got a couple small block Chevrolets I'm doing right now. We're putting retro roller cams in them. Being that they're the old style block, you got to use a thrust button on it. The thrust buttons are all the same. These two covers are basically the same. I've got two of them, so I'm going to set up the machine and do two of them. It saves time. That's the way I always like to do things in pairs if the machine's set up. So we're going to spot face this out of the cover, because the button that I use, and these are a small block button, you can't take it apart and trim much off of it, although I've done that and I've trimmed on the back side of it. But we're going to get this out of the way. We're going to spot face that flush to the cover, and then we're going to stop. We're not going any deeper. We're just getting rid of this little bump in here. It does not help me out when I use this button. And this is the button, thrust button, I prefer to use on a small block. So we're going to get going on cutting this, and then we're going to get going on modifying this until we get our end play where we want it. Now, I also have doubled up on the gaskets to get the end play desired. If it's close, say you need about 10 thousandths. Usually if you put another gasket on it, it's a pretty good deal. I know they make other covers, so I'm well aware of that. These are relatively inexpensive. It doesn't take a lot of work to spot face them. It's a little bit of screwing around. Obviously with a newer style block, you just put the cam thrust plate on it and be done with it. But these are older blocks, and we don't use conventional cams much on anything anymore. So I'd much rather go through the motions on this and spend a little bit of time than having problems with a camshaft, conventional camshaft wiping out. So we're going to set it up right now. As this is a cast cover, there's a little bit of indifference there. We're going to stop right there. We set it on a couple, 2-3 blocks, 4 of them. And we're just going to eyeball it, get it kind of centered. We want this as flat as we can get it. You could do it with a die grinder, but then it's only riding on the highest spot. Hopefully we're going to get it to flat all the way around, so it rides on more than just one little spot on the cover. This one had a little bit of a casting bump on it that was catching on the end mill. So we had to do this one a little differently, but it's got a flat spot on the cover to ride on. One thing I want to do to this one, I take it off of here. This cover here, somebody took a belt sander to it or whatever when they, you know, I bought it that way. That's the way they did it. And before I take it off of there, then I did this one. I'll hit it with a long file and at least get some of it. But I just assume have it relatively flat before we have to do any of that. I'll hand sand it a little bit up here. Well, it takes care of that. That's, you know, these things are ass cast. And most certainly there ain't a flat spot on these things, so. But anyhow. So we did to that one. Just clean it up a little bit. And you can see there's still grinding marks here where they really got after it. And I don't know why, but, you know. Why do people do some of the things they do? But anyways, we'll continue. Okay, so we got both covers spot faced. Blended that back a little bit with a Scotch wheel. Long boarded this. As you can see, this here is where they've ground more off than they should have. It's not going to be a problem. RTV will take care of that. The rest of it's relatively flat. I did that with a long board with a piece of 80 grit, and if you cross sand with this, you'd be surprised. You can get things pretty damn flat with this. If you don't believe me, look down the side of a black car that somebody's done it right and blocked it out. I've done many, and you can get things damn flat. This one cleaned up really nice because they didn't take a belt sander or whatever they did to the other one when I got it. And this one's been dusted back lightly. What I like to do with these covers is there's no lead on this. And you'll be pressing the seal through there. The seal is rounded here, but if you try to press it, a lot of times it'll off-center itself and you can screw up the seal housing. You know, that one is going to start fine. Probably put a little Loctite around that one because it is a shade loose. This one is just a little bit, but what I normally do to them, and this will be fine, normally what I do is this is a pretty cheap seal. I usually use the coated ones. They'll have like green on them. I think they're Chicago Rawhide CR seal. Anyhow, I take a chamfer tool and I go in and I break this edge a little bit more than what they did. I got to plug my drill in and I'll be right back. So, I mean, you know, there's some screwing around with this. Could you buy a better cover and not do all this? Well, I bought better covers, and it seems like you're always going to do something with somebody's stuff. So it's just part of the deal, you know. If you buy it and you just think you're going to pull it out of a box and it's going to work, it usually don't work that way, unless you get really lucky. And I do this stuff to make my life easier. You know, I don't particularly care to ruin seals. So you can see I broke the edge on that. That's plenty. That's all we need to do. You can look and see that, you know, the seal's going to find itself home a lot better than it is on this one. Like I said, I know what happens if you try to just press it straight in without doing this. So there you go. Both of them are done. It'll be easier for me. So I have the front cover on this small block Chevrolet. And what I did is I've got 4 bolts, and I've adjusted the cover and sorry, trying to do 2 things at once. I adjusted the cover and I stuck feeler gauges in between the gap until it's level, top, bottom. Okay, then I take and I measure it. And when I measured it, I got 90 thousandths. 90 thousandths before the cover touches, after spot facing it. Now, what can you do differently? Well, you can do a lot of things different, but I prefer to do it this way. I've done it this way for quite a while. It's a little bit of screwing around, but I like these buttons here. It's aluminum cover, so could you take an aluminum button and grind it down until you got your end play that you wanted? Well, yeah, you could do that. But aluminum on aluminum, I'm not a big fan of it. I'm sure there's oil getting splashed up in the front of the cover, but I prefer not to do that. Could you use a nylon button? Yeah, you could probably use a nylon button or a phenolic button, and I think the only body that sells the phenolic buttons is Escuderian, and I don't know if Esky Cams still is selling them or not. So what I do with the button is you can't take nothing off the front of the button. That's pretty much almost flush. There's not enough there to be taken. And so we'll back up a little bit here. So we've got 90 thousandths between the cover and it's on the button right now. So that means we got a 90 thousandths air gap right here. The gasket's 25. We're going to call it 20 because the gasket is going to compress some. So what we need to take off is 70 thousandths, a little more than a 1/16 of an inch. That's most certainly doable. And how I do it is I take and put the button, take the button apart carefully because them clips, they can break easy. Take it apart, put it in the 3-jaw chuck, and then face 70 off the back of this. Now with these, because they're a Torrington thrust, that one's got a little bit of stuff and it'll have to be cleaned out. Of course, it'll be coming apart anyways. But I'm going to do both buttons. I'm going to cut both buttons for both engines right now. I'm going to take 70 thousandths off of them. And how I'm going to do that is, like I said, I'm going to take it apart. I'm going to clamp it here, and I'm going to face 70 thousandths off the back of this. I like these tight up against the cover, but I don't like them up against the cover so much that they're pushing on them. A lot of people say, you know, if you've got 10 thousandths play, that's fine. But the chain set that I'm running has got a Torrington in it thrust. And the gear is cut for a Torrington thrust. And this is a Torrington. And I don't want these battery ramming back and forth inside the engine. This is going to wear a little bit. It's probably going to wear into the cover a little bit. So if I set this almost up at 0 to 5 thousandths, down the road, maybe it'll open up a little bit. So I like to run these tight. A solid button with a bronze bushing or no Torrington thrust on the cam gear. You want them a little looser because you want oil to get up in there, and you're not running a bunch of needle bearings, so you can run them a little looser. But I prefer my end play to be fairly tight with this type of setup and with a Torrington thrust gear, top gear. And I'll take that apart and I'll put it up in the lathe. I broke my tripod, so sorry about the jerky video. Hopefully tomorrow when the JB weld is dry, we'll be good to go. So we got the thrust button apart. The back side of this measures 260. So we're going to scribe a little line on here, and I'll be measuring it because I can get my micrometer through the, my digital verniers between the 3-jaw chuck. And I can monitor facing this as I cut it. So what we're going to do is we're going to take it down to 190 thousandths here. And, you can't take anything off of here. You could probably take maybe 10 thousandths without getting in trouble. You have these 2 hardened washers in here. You could take one of them out, but I'd rather not run on this. I don't know how hard this is. Usually when I cut them, they're not very hard. And then you're going to have to worry about this part of it poking out and rubbing on the cover. So that's not such a great idea. It's best not to mess with this. And then if you ever have to shim these, I have a punch set. And you can take a piece of shim stock and punch it out. And I put a little Permatex on here or a little contact cement to hold it and adjust my end play like that. It's a little bit of screwing around, but this is the way I always do them. You can buy an adjustable cover, then you can adjust your own play. That's another way to go about doing this. On the big blocks, usually if it's a Gen or Mark 4 block, I use the Gen 6 chain and the retaining plate in the gear set, and I'm done with it. But when you do these older small blocks, this is kind of the only way you can do this. I'm sure there's other ways of doing it. This is just the way that I've always done it. I just kind of bite the bullet and do it this way because I've never had a problem doing it this way. So this is the way I'm going to keep doing it. I'm just showing you how I do it. If you've got a way that works better, that's great. But this is how I do it. So we're going to machine this, and then I'll get back to putting it back together and seeing where our end play is. I'll spare you watching me cut it down on the lathe. It's pretty basic stuff. So we got this cut down on the lathe, and the target size was 190. It was originally 260. That's kind of what I figured we needed to make this all work. Okay. Sometimes you can push that on if you've got something just a little bit bigger than that. Although I have the pliers right here, but I've never tried to do it and hold the camera on. Probably ain't gonna work. Yeah, I'm gonna be back in a second. So we got the clip back on it, and I used a nut driver. I think that's what, a 1/4 inch. Anyways, yeah, 1/4 inch. Anything bigger than the actual pin, once you get it started, you just push down on it, it'll clip, it finds its center, and Obviously, you can check it by the gap in between it. You can tell it's setting in there. On these clips, I always put the sharp end of the clip out, facing out. So the inside of the clip, as these clips are basically stamped, they'll have a round face to them where it's been pushed through, and then the other side will be sharp. It'll have it won't be round, so the clip will look kind of like this, and then on the other side of the clip it'll look kind of roundish when they stamp the hole through it. So I always put that towards the it would be the thrust button, and then the sharp end goes towards the outer pin where it clips. We'll see how close we are. Okay, you can see the difference in them. Modified, not modified. These are small block thrust buttons. They're the same height. I measured them prior. You can see that this is the one I cut down. So, like I said, this is the way I do it. This is kind of a lot of screwing around. I mean, most people probably will just take a solid thrust button and file it down until they get it, or belt sand it down until they get what they want. But I prefer to use this thrust button because if the cover's not perfectly flat, this is going to, and hopefully we're not talking about a spot that's, the size of a pinhead, but we want something that's going to be relatively flat over at least 3/4, though. It'd be nice if it was all perfectly flat, but I'm not that naive. I know that it isn't, but we try to get everything as good as we can. But it's going to allow the button to spin because it has a Torrington in it, instead of using a solid button, which could wear. This isn't going to wear out. The cover's going to wear out. This isn't going to wear out. So that's kind of why I do this. It's a little extra work, but I've set up belt drives and stuff, so this is nothing new to me, and I kind of am used to going a long way around the block, I guess. If you choose not to do this, I understand. But like I said before, this is the way that I do things, and I feel that this is a good way to do it because I haven't had any problems doing them this way, and if I had problems, I wouldn't be doing it this way. Okay, you can see that I used just some old Play-Doh. You can see that it's pretty even. Around it, so it's pretty much, I would say, 0 at this point. Of course, we can take the gear off and we can put it all back together with all the screws on it, and then we can check end play. But probably what's going to happen is I'm going to blue Loctite these screws in. I'm going to put the gasket on and I'm going to tighten it down. I may take another 2/1000ths off this and put it together and just let it go. I have no problem with that. I do use the retainer clip, although you really don't need the retainer with the bend over clips. I usually just put it on there. It takes up some of the space here, but it really ain't much of an issue. This is IDing on the cam face. It's not going to go anywhere. It can't really fall out. And I don't bend the clips over. The tabs or the clips, whatever you want to call them, I just put the plate on and I put red Loctite on these and I tighten them up, and that's all I do. So that's pretty much it on this. I'd say we got it pretty damn close. It's a nice even pattern all the way around. You can see. Of course, we'll dig out the putty. We won't leave that in the engine. But this button is, I would say, really damn close to being right where I want it. So like I said, I don't like a lot of end play with the Torringtons. I got a Torrington here and I got a Torrington behind here. They don't want to be banging back and forth. So I'd say I got a little bit of preload on it right now. I might take 2000s. I might just lap this front button, take it off. I've done that. Lapping that button will get me 2000s, and it's not going to hit in there. I mean, I think there's probably maybe like 20 thousandths height difference there, but just lapping that button is going to probably get me where I want to be. And like I said before, I don't have a problem running these at 0 or a little bit of play. I don't want 10 thousandths back and forth like this. Well, there you go. That's how I do it. If you want to comment, fine. But this is how I do it. So